of like water jug. If you've never played a tournament, having your own water and being able to access it and get water anytime you need is huge. But I do think they're ready for the interview, potentially. We might be ready to toss it to Steven here pretty shortly to find out our players, and it looks like we are going to toss it over and meet our teams here in round number 3 at the Team YCS in Las Vegas.
All right, and I know we've stressed it before, but the Team YCS tournament is incredible. Again, the fact that we have our VIPs finally taking the stage. Let's talk about them now. Again, first off, we're going to have our team Viva Las Vegas. Again, representing the A spot is going to be Rennie. Holding down the B spot is going to be Renard. And then finally representing Viva Las Vegas is going to be Charlie in the C spot. Again, speaking about those VIPs, we do have Pays Gaming. Again, a VIP means that they got the first 2 rounds for free, so they're just joining the tournament now, taking the stage.
As long as I don't get my Crocs, I'll be
representing
good.
our A spot, there they come, is going to be Connor, holding it down. And then, for the B spot in the middle is going to be Jesus. And finally, representing Pays Gaming, it's going to be Luis in the C spot.
All right, so those are our teams. They're facing off against each other here in round number 3. As we mentioned and Steven mentioned, these are going to be one of these teams. I'm not sure which one. I'm going to guess is the one with the cool jerseys on there that is either qualified for a VIP, and then they had 2 buys. And the other, meanwhile, the other team, unless they're a VIP, won the first 2 rounds. Now, well, tell me about that dynamic between starting with 2 buys as opposed to having to win the first 2 rounds. Who do you think has the advantage? I mean, one team's fresh, the other one's already had a couple games under their belt.
That's an interesting question. Whenever I've played in the era of buys, once you reach that 2-0 moment, I feel like I'd rather be in that position because your feet are already wet. You've already had a few games under your belt. I always like to play a couple games before the tournament starts just to kind of feel out those things. If you ask me before the tournament, though, would I rather just start 2-0? Well, obviously, I'm going to select that. But at this point in time, I rather would have played those first 2 rounds because, you know, sometimes you have assumptions about the way the format's going to line up with some of your deck choices, and you don't actually know what that looks like until you actually get to sit down against another person who came to their own conclusions, maybe from a part of the country or world that you've never seen or never interacted with. And now all of a sudden, you get to get those games under your belt, understand how other people are approaching the format, and know that you've won those first 2 matches already.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's even more amplified in the team setting because you had those like camaraderie already for the 2 rounds. Not only did you win those first 2 rounds, so did your teammates, or maybe you helped out your teammates, so they're going to be relying on you. I think, yeah, you definitely want to have some games underway. You mentioned playing before the tournament. That's something I also like. I'm pretty sure you and me like do that. I'm pretty sure there's been like YCS in the past where we like played before the tournament and then round 1 we had to play.
Yes, we played multiple early on. I remember in 2014, the NAWCQ, you weren't a big fan of, or at least maybe not a big advocate of the Sylvan strategy, and I showed you its potency early on at the beginning of the day, and I remember you thinking to yourself, wow, I am not playing that deck.
Yeah, I didn't get too much practice for that tournament. I showed up like just the day before and tried to like borrow a deck. My friends were like, oh, you should play Boojins, but then I like settled on like a Mermail deck because it's like a strategy I was like at least a little familiar with, but I do remember playing it. I'm like, oh, that's the deck I think I would have enjoyed playing as well. I still regret that to this day, that I didn't have the opportunity to play like that full power, soul charge, like Sylvan strategy with
Lone-Fire Blossom, one of your favorite cards.
Oh, I know, and Soul Charge, also one of my favorite cards. Miracle Fertilizer's not half bad either. But we're not going to be seeing plants here just yet, but we do have an interesting surprise here for our first matchup. You know, it is the year 2024. It's not 2023 or 2022, but you might think it is based upon the strategies these players have brought. The most recent set is Phantom Nightmare, not Burst of Destiny, I promise you. But one of our players, so we kind of looked at the deck list one at a time. The first one, we're like, oh, cool, this one's playing Floowandereeze. But I mean, we're going to see it here shortly that one of the players is on this bird strategy, which is a good counter pick to all the Fire King and Snake Eye stuff that's running around, since it can main deck stuff like Dimensional Fissure, and of course, you know, Dimension Shifter, those cards, keeping cards out of the graveyard. But his opponent also playing a Burst of Destiny strategy that if you play at a local OTS, you're probably going to run into it.
At some point, the Swordsoul strategy.
The Swordsoul strategy, the other theme that came out of Burst of Destiny, which is like really talks about how strong that set is, that it came with 2 brand new themes that saw play for forever, and like Floowandereeze has not stopped being part of like the meta ever since its release. Swordsoul goes in and out, but it's really powerful for what you can do. And it's funny because like back in this matchup, I always felt like it leaned more towards Swordsoul, but we're gonna find out if that's still the case here in 2024. But the key thing is, I think both these players have probably like built their decks to beat the Fire King strategy, and now we're going to see how it plays out when they face a deck that isn't Fire King or Snake Eye or something, you know, capitalizing on the graveyard as much.
I mean, they are both utilizing Dimension Shifter, which is always funny when those type of strategies go up against each other. One thing, just going back to talking about this particular matchup, is it's really the advent of Adventure that I think gave Floowandereeze a little bit more play, because previously those negation effects, which the Swordsoul strategy has an abundance of, was really difficult for the Floowandereeze strategy, but with the release of Advent of Adventure, it gave it a different dynamic playing into some of those interactions.
I definitely think you're right. If you haven't seen them activate the Advent just yet, you kind of are cautious to negate like that first monster effect, because you don't want them to be able to blink out their monster and still resolve their effects. So you kind of want to time it well. But sometimes you can, sometimes their hand's like not the way it needs to be. They'll have to start with like that Advent, banishing like a Stree to try and get access to Robina or something like that. And every time that happens, like, okay, good, now I don't have to worry about it. But there is a new card that we might not see here today in this matchup that just came out in the past set that basically does something very similar to the Advent of Adventure. But I don't think we're going to be seeing it here today. But it could be a reason why people have put Floowandereeze back on the radar. It looks like we might be swapping out laptops here real quick for one of the judges. Not a big deal. They could still probably jump into the game, but all of the duelists are waiting. This is round 3, both teams 2-0. I like these team names a lot more than the last.
Very appropriate.
Last two, yeah. Viva Las Vegas is nice. I wonder if it's PAEZ Gaming, like maybe they're from Pennsylvania and it's Easy Gaming over there.
Pennsylvania Easy Gaming? I don't know.
Who knows? It could be Pez also, but it does look like our counter is gone, which means it's time to jump into the games. It's game 1, round 3, YCS Las Vegas. And here we go into the die roll. One of the players rolls a 9. Renard is going to roll 6, 8. Oh, just short. When you see that 6, you're like, oh, okay, there's a chance, but the other dice let him down. Jesus is going to be starting things off here with his Swordsoul strategy. I can't wait to see the facial expression on like each other's faces when they see like what their opponent is playing.
One of the things going back to anytime Swordsoul's been competitive is questioning whether or not they can get Barone to floor on the field, or if they're going to go into the full combo line where they get the additional draws but leave themselves weak to cards like Nibiru.
Yeah, it is always like the dynamic of the deck. I do like that it's really powerful when you do get that Chang Ying, the Sinister Sovereign one, out onto the field early. But it does look he's going to start with Ashuna, link it away into Monk of the Tinyi, then he's going to special summon Har from the hand. This is the bread and butter Tinyi combo for the deck, because now he's going to special summon Vishuddha with the Ashuna. Now he has the level 1 tuner, and he'll be able to synchro for a level 8. So if you open up with the Tinyi strategy, you can still get access to the Swordsoul strategy. Kind of similar how the Fire King Snake Eye kind of works, where they're able to use another complementing strategy to really access the other half of your deck as well. And we do see that Chi-Chao come down.
It's really amazing how well the Tenyis lined up with the Swordsoul, because the Swordsoul monsters also generate normal tokens onto the field.
Yep, I do love that. They're like a match made in heaven. Even like when you have the token level 4, they have like the Shathana. If you want to summon that from your deck, so you can still go into a level 8 Synchro. And it looks like Chi-Chao isn't going to add Swordsoul Blackout. He's going to go for Long Yuan here.
So the fact that he didn't search Emergence, what do you think that might mean?
1, he already has it. 2, he values it in his deck as a top deck potentially. And like there is no Arch Nemesis Protos, so it's not as like key. A lot of times in Master Duel, you'll see them going for that Emergence to go for Protos. But he is going to banish the Adhara to add back the Ashuna, so he can discard it for the Long Yuan here to get his token. Now it looks like, let's see if he's going to go for that Sinister Sovereign.
Or allowed him to play around Droll as well.
Yep, it does. But he is going to go for Baron de Fleur. Oh, he can't go for Baron de Fleur. He's worm-locked. He is worm-locked from that Ashuna. It has to be the Sinister Sovereign. If anyone can hear me, it has to be Sinister Sovereign. It can't be Baron de Fleur. Baron de Fleur is something you'd have to go into first. It does look like the judge did catch that here.
Yeah, it does lock me into
Yep.
it. It does lock me into it.
Yeah, that is one of the downsides of starting with the 10E package. Is it's fantastic. It links into the entire engine, but it does give you that limitation.
Okay, so he picked the Long Yuan. He didn't pick the Sinister Sovereign Long Yuan. He went with the Chang
I
Ying.
just locked myself into worms, and I couldn't.
Yeah, that should just be an easy minor.
Huh? No.
I'm just going to get a little warning there, like, be careful.
Oh.
It's the first duel of the game.
so
It
burn
could
for
potentially be. I'm not sure exactly which team started 2-0, but it could be potentially the first duel
Say one.
of the day.
And this is a cool interaction. So Chang Ying effect will activate if a card is banished. The Chi-Chao can banish a card from the graveyard, and the Chang Ying can banish a card from the opponent's
so
graveyard and
he
field.
just can't
Non-targeting.
use the card effect.
And it also
And
gains
this
100
one
attack
has a
and defense for every
monster
banished
face-up
card.
monster.
So then the opponent's monsters all lose that attack and defense as well. Or just attack, maybe.
And then the black, if I don't know if it is, but if it is blackout set, he would also be able to protect himself.
Yes, one of my favorite things about Swordsoul. I'm somewhat of a Swordsoul duelist myself. Well, I've been known to play Swordsoul in the past. It's also, there's a Master Duel starter deck or something you can get by like reaching out to more friends. You'll get like a Swordsoul starter. It's pretty cool. If you haven't checked out Master Duel, you definitely want to download that and check it out. But Renard is starting things off with a Pot of Duality.
And here we will get the reveal.
Oh, this has to be an Eaglin. Eaglin for sure off this one.
Yeah.
We do see Dimension Shifter, Eaglin. Oh, never mind, and Dimensional Fissure. He's going to go for the Dimensional Fissure. I guess after seeing like the Tenyis, I could see wanting a card that's going to keep monsters out of the graveyard.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice.
Maybe he already has Eaglin, so it's just maybe a non-choice, yeah.
Yeah, it's better to have that going first than into an established field, because a lot of the Tenyis are already in the graveyard.
Oh, it also helps around like any sort of interaction from the hand potentially that needs to go to the graveyard. I could see that.
Yeah, if he has something like Rabina in hand already, or this
map.
Yeah, he's a face-up monster negate.
So he can use the map to reveal Floowandereeze, banish the Floowandereeze from his deck, and then summon.
So if he has one downside of playing Fissure early is if there was blackout set, he would have 2 targets on the field. So he could have just held the Fissure also to potentially not play into blackout. Just one thing to consider. Obviously, you can't play around everything.
Oh, yeah, but blackout on the map here would be huge.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Do you value the risk of the blackout on the map, or do you value having Fissure up to stop cards like Effect Veiler?
Yeah, it's a tough call there, but he does have that Eaglin in hands, which is why he really didn't have to think about it too much. And the Shifter not being able to use unless he had like a Stree to banish the Duality, plus not really useful against Swordsoul, but the map will resolve the Eaglin summon to Chainlink 1, Robina Chainlink 2 to come back to the hand. Does he use the Chi-Chow here to banish or to negate the Eaglin effect?
This is what we were talking about earlier, where if there is that advent of adventure, these are those interactions that can be really frustrating.
So he's gonna
go Chainlink 1 Changing. Since the card was banished, he can banish the Duality and the Eaglin, or the map.
Card in your graveyard can play at the same time.
Explaining the effect there to Renard.
I feel like you probably just go after the map because there's the follow-up on your turn, or the interaction on your turn. Not really quite follow-up, but the interaction on your turn.
Yeah, so his effect...
yeah, and if you banish the Eaglin, it's going to banish itself by its own effect anyway and be able to return to the hand. It is one less monster on the board that they can use for a tribute, but with Robina coming, being able to search something like Stree or even Toucan,
so
he's not going to have a problem getting monsters on the field. I didn't quite see what Eaglin... Oh, he hasn't added with Eaglin. We're still resolving that chain link.
Well, we're actually at Chainlink 3 right now.
Chi-Chow? Yeah. Chainlink 4, Chi-Chow.
4. Remove the cost.
Going to banish that Longy one. Let's see if there is that Advent that you've been talking about. Does he have the Advent of Adventure?
It's Chainlink 5. Honestly, because you still have a normal summon, I guess he's still going to use it.
Does have the Advent. You said, you called it. He's going to banish that Eaglin, so it won't be able to have its effect negated. So he's going to be able to add that tribute monster, the Winged Beast, to his hand. The Robina is going to add to the hand and then be able to be summoned at the resolution of Eaglin. This is pretty ideal here for Renard going into this board, but Jesus still has that face-down spell and trap.
Which I think we can presume is probably a card like Infinite Impermanence, because you want to activate the face-up negation before you use a unrevealed card that is set. Like from the perspective of Jesus, he probably wants to use the Chi-Chow because it's face-up in public knowledge, whereas if you had Infinite Impermanence, which would have a similar underlying effect, you don't want to activate that from the set back row in the spell and trap card zone because it would reveal information that you don't necessarily need to reveal. And then, like I said earlier, Blackout probably would have been activated on the map.
Yeah, definitely. Because the map just has access to Robina right away. So it looks like, is he thinking about chaining? Or no, they're just making sure they resolve the chain backward. He's picking for chaining because the Eaglin's no longer on the field. He's going after the Dimensional Fissure and the Pot of Duality out of the graveyard. So now it looks like they're just trying to resolve the chain links. We got to see what he's going to add for Eaglin, and then the Robina will go to hand. Well, the Robina should go to hand, and then he adds for Eaglin. Oh no, he's resolving map maybe. It doesn't look like they're doing it in the proper order to me, but we can't really see off screen what's going on.
That's what happens when you have a 6-card chain link.
Yeah, didn't get to see what he added there because it was off camera.
Alter at the end of all of this, he's going to have an additional normal summon, or
And the Robina should be in his hand. Oh, that's the Eaglin that's over there. He did add the Robina to his hand. Okay, good.
Yep.
Now he can add the Eaglin back to protect the chain links there, so it won't be able to respond to Robina's effect directly.
Which would cut off cards like Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring.
It goes for Toucan. Maybe he already has Street, because it's cool with Street, you can like banish your Floowandereeze spell and traps and then add them back to your hand with Toucan, and he does already have the Street. So he's going to use Street's effect to...
Yeah.
Does he go after a Tinyi, or does he go after his own Floowandereeze card so he can add it back with Toucan? It's up to him.
I would 100% go against the Tenyi cards, because without Dimensional Fissure on the field,
They pose a problem.
they could potentially pose a problem.
Yeah, Vishuda, great at breaking boards. Ashuna, great at summoning monsters.
It's really the Ashuna specifically because it puts another Tenyi on the field that then goes to the graveyard. And if Deep-Fissure was on the field, at least that would be somewhat mitigated, but without that on the field.
Yeah.
And then Vishuda is an important one to hit too because you want to keep your Empen safe.
Yeah, and this Chain Ying is going to be difficult for Renard to deal with because it's in defense mode, so its effect's not negated. It can protect itself by banishing a card. And it makes all of Renard's monsters much smaller, especially with all these banishes. 1, 2, 3, 4 banished. They're all losing. All his monsters are losing 400 attack and defense, and it's gaining those stats as well.
He really is going to have to rely on something like Ryza, the Mega Monarch. And
Or Unexplored Winds is another good
Unexplored
one.
Winds, yeah, that's another way. And he is resolving here Empen, so he can actually search the Unexplored Winds. And I actually thought I saw a copy of Ryza, the Mega Monarch, in his hand.
Oh, if it's already in his hand, that's pretty good. But it does look like he's going for Dreaming Town to have the setup on Jesus' turn.
Yeah, it looks like right there in the middle it might be a copy of the Mega Monarch.
Oh, triple tactics thrust. That's huge. Since Jesus has monsters on the field, Renard's going to be able to add any normal spell or trap from his deck to his hand. Triple tactics talent's a really good one. But he's going, oh, that one's way worse. Harpy's Featherstorm. Renard's not focused on this turn. He's only focused on next turn.
Which is probably why he got the Dreaming Town.
Yep. He's going to make sure Jesus is not going to be able to come out of this one. But he still has to deal with that Changing. But if he has that Rise of the Mega Monarch, like you mentioned, he will be able to easily deal with it. Looks like Renard keeps hearing things from his teammates, maybe.
You're losing 3.
His teammate's probably warning him to check about the attack. Be careful what you do. That's the best part about the team YCS is you can help your teammate that's right next to you. And like, so y'all talked about like the team order. You think like the stronger one goes in B. You can also put the weakest one in B if A and C are both strong, since they can both like kind of watch and help and guide the person in the middle.
The attack declaration.
There's a lot of strategy involved in the team YCS.
Looked like Jesus just asked if he was going to use Empen's Declaration on attack effect.
Doing damage calculation.
Oh, damage step. What does Jesus have?
Does he play Forbidden something?
I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see what he has that he can use in the damage step in terms of his spell and trap cards. What? I thought I heard him say in the damage step, but maybe he didn't. Because, yeah, you can't do that in the damage step. He's just doing that on the attack declaration. So it's going to negate the Impen's effect, and he's going to take that damage.
Phase 2. Sit.
So he's
I'm not
got.
sure I understand why the Imperm was activated.
I mean, did he attack the Chi-Chow or did he attack Chang Ying?
He attacked Monk.
Yeah, and then Renard's activating Harvey's Featherstorm. Yeah, I would have worked on maybe like clearing this. I feel like there had to have been a way, maybe, but Featherstorm is a strong card. Since he controls that Winged Beast, Jesus isn't going to be able to activate monster effects for the rest of the turn. But he already has like a pretty established board that does a lot on its own. But dealing with the Impen is difficult without monster effects. But he can just chain the Chi-Chow to the Impen. Oh,
it's an attack position.
Yep, so it won't. I mean, he still can use it. I think it's just negated. But maybe they can't activate their effects.
You can still pay cost, right?
Yeah, that's what I think.
No, it doesn't really matter now. That's fine.
Yeah, we're just going to double check on the text of Empen.
Up says you can't activate, so he won't have to pay the cost. All right, he's taking a second to look at his extra deck.
This is tough. Obviously, Featherstorm makes this moot, but in general, Swordsoul is a strategy that revolves around using non-link monsters, which means
Your turn.
you want to have a lot of these in attack mode, but you can't. So you have to make these plays where they have to just be in defense mode.
And yeah, the Featherstorm just skipped his turn basically here. This is interesting. I guess Renard is like, he's done this before. He knows that if he can just buy himself a turn, get enough time to keep summoning his Floowandereeze monsters, like if he's able to use the Dreaming Town here, start getting more birds on the field, more tribute summon monsters, access to Rise of the Mega Monarch, he'd be able to turn this game around.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like sometimes when you're forced to go into only links, obviously you're never getting any of the effects, but even the option of putting these all in defense mode doesn't seem that ideal right now.
Yeah, not great.
But you can negate, right?
So you do want to use Dreaming Town right now, because now that it is in defense mode, if this turn passes back to Renard, he would be able to use that effect to negate one of the Floowandereeze normal summons. So you do want to do this now while it's shut off.
Yeah, so this is where the birds take flight. This is where they're able to fill the field. Let's see what he decides to normal summon. He has the Toucan in hand for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
He can.
I feel like his teammates are stopping. Like Renard has a plan, and his teammates are holding him back a little bit right now.
It's almost as if they're discussing his ability to negate, which he no longer has the ability to do. Just because they shifted it to defense doesn't mean it's around Harpy Featherstorm.
Mm-hmm. And it looks like Stree's going to come down and take out the Ashuna.
No, that's fantastic.
Did he? He didn't use the. He didn't activate the banished one's effects yet. Luckily, he has another Floowandereeze in the hand, so he'll be able to do that. So now Eaglin coming down with the resolution of Stree's effect for another normal summon. Let's see if he goes Chainlink 1, Eaglin, Chainlink 2, Robina.
Yeah. I was seeing if activated.
His protection effect will still work under Featherstorm, but you won't be able to use that banishing effect. It is an activated effect, even though it is continuous. Like while it's face up on the field, it still activates.
Okay.
Miss Valley Apex Avian.
Yeah, and then he did get Robina back here. So this was the important part of doing it all while Featherstorm was live.
Yeah, and the big thing, putting the Dreaming Town in the graveyard, he's going to be able to flip those monsters face down as well if he wants. Tributes off the Eaglin and Stree for Rise of the Mega Monarch. So the important thing is to know which targets. It can potentially target 3 things if you tribute a wind monster. The first target goes to the top of the deck. One goes to the deck, one goes to the hand, and one goes...
You have to tribute the Empen to get all 3.
Yeah, you have to tribute... No, just a wind, right? Does it have to be a tribute summon wind?
Wind tribute summon, yeah.
So it had to be the Empen. So just 2 targets. The Dreaming Town's going to put everything face down. He's going to return the Eaglin to his hand. He can put a card on top of his own deck if he wants.
Or you can return the Ryza also.
He can put the Ryza back in his hand and put a card on top of his deck, potentially. Let's see what his 2 targets are. You have to read like each one. Like where does each target go where?
He can put the Featherstorm back on top of his deck.
I love it when they do that with Dimension Shifter and they just keep using it over and over again. That's always a lot of fun.
So what happens what?
They'll just go to the extra deck.
Yeah, I mean, no matter what, if you target like extra deck monsters, they're going to go back to the extra deck because all those things return either to the top of the deck or back into the deck.
Target if I tribute a win.
Looks like he shuffled Featherstorm in. Looks like they're talking to the judge really quickly here. So yeah, I bet you're all missing Snake Eye Ash about now. Just kidding. But there's a lot of variety of decks, and it's fun to see like this blast from the past, this burst of destiny here in round number 3.
One thing that's just interesting to note in general is the ability to banish from your opponent's graveyard can make it so that Chichan never has one in the graveyard, so you would need a worm in hand to be able to get the negation effects.
That is kind of cool. It goes back to that emergence thing. If he got emergence for Long Yuan, he would have another Swordsoul card to like have fuel for that. Not that it would get there, but that kind of answers your question you had earlier about why not just go for emergence.
Only one. My target is super attack.
May have been the key here when you know you're relying on Chichan. But I don't think Jesus expected that he was playing his Floowandereeze, especially I guess sitting here in round number 3. But it looks like they are going to have a quick judge call so we can kind of like step away and see what's going on the other duels. Looks like, oh, I can't tell way down there. The first matchup, They are playing. We see this overlay on there, so we can't really see what's on their field, but it looks like it's player A's turn. Player A, I have his name here. So it is Rennie
versus Connor.
This matchup's pretty cool. This is Kashtira against
Voiceless Voice.
Voiceless Voice. It is Voiceless Voice has been on almost every single team that we've had on our feature match so far. At least one member brought it. It's definitely a strong pick, but I can't wait to see if we get to see it in like really strong action in the top cut. But there's a lot of Voiceless Voice here this weekend.
It's actually a Kashtira Sinful Spoils deck. I'm not going to say Snake Eyes because there are no Snake Eyes, but it actually has the wanted package.
That's interesting. Just using as another level 7.
Probably.
Why not? Yeah, and you get access to like the draw. Oh, you can also use like the trap card, the Sinful Spoils of Betrayal. That also works really well. It's basically just a free negate of any card.
That's an interesting strategy. A lot of players that have been playing Kashtira have been utilizing a Decode Talker package, and it looks like Rennie is doing that as well. There's been a lot of popularity with that, with Link Spider.
Yeah, you're able to maybe draw into a Diabell Star. Even afterwards, then you can summon it, set the trap card, the Sinful Spoils of Betrayal, and then just you have an additional interruption during the opponent's turn. But it looks like we're jumping right back into the second table. Yeah, I knew it had to be the Featherstorm thing. I know all of Ryza has a lot of effects, but none of them shuffle back into the deck. I'm fairly certain.
Yeah.
The Featherstorm was supposed to go on top. They have a face up to signify that they are putting it back on top.
Your turn.
Okay, draw.
He's going to draw his face up RB Featherstorm. Not Parasite. Don't get it confused here. But now Renard back into play, only facing down a Monk. Being able to use that thrust for the Harpies Featherstorm was probably the key moment of this duel. I mean, anytime I play against Floowandereeze, they seem to draw hands like this. Map, Adventure, Duality, Thrust. Like, that is a solid opening there from Renard.
Even going second, it was clearly sufficient.
I mean, the Duality was literally able to grab, like, a card that didn't matter. Like, the rest of his hand was just fine. So it looks like he's going to use Map, reveal Toucan from the hand, then banish the Eaglin from the deck, and now he's going to be able to normal summon the Toucan. The Toucan's going to be able to add back that Dreaming Town. I like being able to, also with Impen, if you banish the Impen, adding back the Toucan, because outside of Eaglin, you have no way to really access tribute monsters, but the Toucan being able to add it back from the banish is like a key part of being a really good like Floowandereeze player. Because even though it's like a deck that seems pretty linear, you have to know like all your ways to play and how to capitalize against some of these decks that might be perceived to be on a stronger power level.
You know what? I concede. We can go to the
Okay, thank you, Jesus. He's realizing time's winding down. There's too many birds touching down, so he's going to concede this game so we can get to a game number 2. Still got 26 minutes on the clock, though. Not too bad, but I mean, this is a blast from the past. Like, we had no idea this was going to be our matchup when we sat down, and when we looked at it, I was like, Burst of Destiny, one of my favorite sets of all time. A lot of cool cards. I mean, that's where Destroyer, Phoenix Enforcer came from. Like, it was a revolutionary set, and the themes from there are still being played to this day.
Yeah, anytime that you get to recycle Dreaming Town with the Magnificent Map, it allows you to have those 2 layers of interaction on your opponent's turn, which can make it really difficult, especially in a deck that's normal summon reliant like Swordsoul.
Yeah, definitely. You can just overwhelm them really quickly with all those monsters. I mean, it wasn't like a bad opening there from Jesus with his Swordsoul strategy. It was about as good as it gets for him. I mean, I guess you'd want to have Baron to floor overall, but I still think even if you had a Baron, there would have been a way, like you're going to negate maybe the Map or the Advent, and then there's still that Thrust follow-up, which is really what finished that game off.
You know, whenever you have to special summon a Tenyi and get the Tenyi package with the Shuna, obviously you're locking yourself out of Barone, but you know, typically that field may have lined up better against some other strategies. It's just Floowandereeze strategy had enough layers of interaction on its own turn.
Yeah, I mean, that Advent Adventure was key.
That card, we talked about it before the match even started. When these decks were first released and it was just Burst of Destruction, Burst of Destiny, clearly, without Advent, I'd say the Swordsoul deck was favored in most cases. With Advent, though, it really changed the matchup.
That's right. Advent did come in the following set after that and really took the strategy to the next level. I mean, the Swordsoul got a couple of boosts. They got the Sinister Sovereign, Long Yuan Synchro. We didn't see there. But yeah, not a very good Synchro in against Floowandereeze, but can be huge against some of these other decks, being able to take out a spell or trap and a monster as well. But Changing is one that I'm a huge fan of. But it looks like these duels are side decking. Going in, I feel like you have some cards that might be prepared for these matchups. Like Effect Negation lines up pretty well into these decks, but they both have cards like Advent Adventure, Heavenly Dragon Circle for the Swordsoul side, so they can dodge Effect Negation on both sides. But I do think there is some overlap of side deck cards that people could be bringing that will still be pretty impactful against these strategies that they might not have expected to face in a tournament. But in the early rounds of the tournament, you can really face anything.
Which we can clearly see here. Heading into game 2, I think Jesus is going to still prioritize getting YUGIOH on the field as fast as possible. I think accessing Blackout would be huge, because it could help potentially shut off some of the map plays. But I think Renard, now knowing the matchup, wouldn't have played Dimension Fissure early like that, right? Because that lined them up to potentially be counteracted with the Blackout. So it'll be interesting to see how these players kind of tweak their strategies now that they're more familiar with what the matchup is.
Yeah, I definitely want to see, we talked about like that draw combo, like if you open up with the Long Yuan, you're able to go into the level 10 first, and if you can go into the Swordsoul Sinister Sovereign Long Yuan, you're able to get to draw those cards. I think now that he knows he's playing against Floowandereeze, he might lean into that, not worried about those hand interactions as much, since Floowandereeze is probably more focused on breaking boards. We're going to see how the side decks come into play here. It's game number 2 of the third round of Swiss here at the Team YCS Las Vegas feature match. And it looks like, I assume Jesus is going to go first.
It would make sense. Swordsoul has historically been
Emergence?
a deck that you would choose to go first with, though I think it actually is a pretty good going second deck historically. They were going second versions of this deck around a few years ago.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That was a cool deck. Now it looks like Renard is contemplating using the Ash Blossom on the Swordsoul Emergence. I think you definitely do. Outside of Vessel, the Dragon Cycle, or Heavenly Dragon Circle, there's not going to be something else you want to Ash Blossom, but he has the Quarter Century Secret Rare Called by the Grave for the Ash Blossom. Renard can take solace in knowing that his opponent won't be using Ash Blossom next turn, but what kind of board is Jesus going to put up? Looks like he's going for the Moye. Either that means he only has one other worm, or he has the Long Yuan in hand.
Yeah, no Ash Blossom is something Renard is going to be very pleased to know with this Floowandereeze strategy. That is one of the hand interactions that Advent does not get around.
Yeah, it's the key answer to Advent most of the time. And now Jesus looking to his teammate. Maybe his teammate asked him a question.
Huh? Nice. Activate?
All right, so he does have the Long Yuan already. It looks like, we were right in that he is going to probably focus on, maybe he's going to focus on Baron, since that's what he didn't have last time. But no, I'm trying to draw cards. I'm trying to draw a lot of cards. Let's see if he does make the Sinister Sovereign Long Yuan, or if it's going to be Baron de Fleur. It is Baron, Quarter Century Secret Rare.
One thing about the sequencing here is he had to discard the Adhara, which means he's now going to summon Moye and reveal another worm in his hand, or another Swordsoul card. He could have started with the Moye summon. He's choosing here to have Barone on the field, though, to guarantee the Moye resolves. It's just interesting, because this is going to reveal another card in your hand that you wouldn't necessarily need to. So he's really valuing the level 8 here, stopping any counterplay, because if he has an Infinite Impermanence, for example, he'll now have the Barone on the field. Otherwise, his Moye could have been hit in Infinite Impermanence, and then he wouldn't have that. He would have to discard for Long Yuan and have to use maybe the token with the Moye there.
Yeah, still opting to play it safe here instead of go big or go home against the Floowandereeze strategy. Not bad. He did reveal, I got to see it, was the Sacred Summit, which is a card that didn't used to really see much play in Swordsoul. Maybe now, like, being able to have that other card that can special summon from the graveyard is key in dealing with some of these other decks that have cropped up over the past couple years since the deck's release.
I always like playing a single copy, at least when the deck originally came out.
Bro, we a team.
Dude, yeah, it's not bad. Not a bad card at all. And, like, if something were to go wrong, like, there's, like, a lot of cool things you can do with it, too, with, like, you can go with, like, Taya into Boxia. Boxia kind of does the same thing by bringing back the monster, but if something goes wrong with Boxia, you can still send a Moye, bring back the Moye, do all sorts of cool things with it. But it looks like we're just going to see the Baron, the Chi-Chow, and I'm pretty sure he added Blackout there off the Chi-Chow, holding the Sacred Summon in hand. Not a great start, but he has an Effect Negate, a Spell and Trap / Effect Negate, and probably Blackout. Dark Ruler, no more. Sorry, Hades, not today. You're getting destroyed. So Chi-Chow, Baron, turned off. See, this is where it would have made, he would have gotten a couple draws from the Ting Ting and Lightning Storm to follow it up. What a combination of cards. No effects you can't negate, destroying all the attack position monsters. If that's Blackout, you might as well destroy the spell and traps as well.
That's the lethal 1-2 combo.
And then here we go for the next one. What is it going to be? At map? Yep, it is map. Does he have a Floowandereeze as well? Oh, he goes map first and then Prosperity. Oh, man. Now,
he can't be ashed.
If I'm Jesus, I'm hoping that he misses. It's just 6 non-Floowandereeze cards.
I wanted to bait and negate.
You wanted to bait and negate.
I mean, you could Solemn Judgment that.
You could, you're right. And now here comes the top 3. Okay, no birds. No birds for the first 3. No birds for the second 3. So what is he going to do? What is he going to do? Does he have access to Floowandereeze monsters? He could have had a lot there. We know that Jesus has that Sacred Summit for the follow-up, so Renard's going to want to get a strategy. But man, yeah, Pot of, every time you think of Pot of Prosperity, you're like, it's always going to show me what I need. 6 off the top after like a few cards out of the deck already. But no, sometimes you just miss. 2 copies of map. Shifter, which I'm shocked is still in his deck. Maybe this just doesn't have like, cards in the side deck.
Bad.
It's not that bad. Yeah, I guess
well, it stops the Moye draw. It also stops the draw and the burn damage of long one.
True.
So if they don't have a lot of extenders in their hand and they're forced just to kind of play with the ones that they naturally drew, it can really shut down the additional effects that you would get there. And it would also stop the follow-up. It's not horrible. Not horrible, no. Put it this way.
As long as it's a better option than something like you just don't have a better option to put in from your side, it makes sense to leave it in going second because you just want to have something to use going second, right?
I would much rather have it in my Floowandereeze strategy right now.
the Swordsoul.
So
that is a true statement. Okay, just one set here from Renard. Jesus has me feeling pretty good right now.
You don't normally say that on a turn that goes Dark Ruler no more, Lightning Storm, Pot of Prosperity.
Maybe you should start with the Pot of Prosperity. The Prosperity will be like, oh, let's see if I can actually use these cards just yet.
Well, but you negate it with Barone.
Yeah, you have to do it. You have to use all your cards right away. He could have tried to bait out the negate with the map, though.
Maybe.
But
the map would have been good if he had a
Floowandereeze.
Yeah.
Swordsoul, Sacred Summit, that can special summon back a Swordsoul monster from the graveyard. I didn't hear what he targeted, but probably Moye because we know he has. Oh, he had a Taya. He had a Taya off the Cheat Child last turn, so we can only assume that the face down is Blackout. But if the face down is Blackout, as soon as he gets a worm to touch down on the field, it's live again.
Which means playing the map may be really counterproductive in the long run because it gives him that second target on the field right now.
Definitely. But the DD Crow, is that what he grabbed with the Prosperity? Can you grab a Synchro? Oh, it's still a Swordsoul monster. Yep.
Oh. So target Cheat Child. So.
Yep.
So do you want to change your target? I don't know if that's what he's meaning.
It looks like there's a communication error. It looks like he thought he was targeting Moye, but he said Cheat Chow, so he wants to. He obviously wants to crow the target.
Yeah, of course. One other thing about playing the map is it opens him up to Boxia now.
Ooh, and just losing that map.
Has historically been one of the best decks breaking fields because of access to cards like Boxia.
And Boxia and Taya go hand in hand, as you're basically able to like swap out a card for whatever worm you send with Taya. But he's going to banish the Long Yuan to summon a token. Long Yuan being banished is cool because he'll be able to add that back later on potentially, or right now.
This second with Anhara.
So he adds Long Yuan back from the banish to his hand. Taya is going to be able to sync for the level. Let's see if it is that Boxia like you called it. I'm pretty sure it has to be. I mean, and the best thing with Taya, it's 2 different attributes. Taya being a wind, the token being a water. Moye into Boxia, you only get to spin back 1 card. Taya, though, you get 2 since you have 2 different attributes being used for the Synchro Summon of Boxia. Brightness of the Yangzing.
And then he'll be able to use Boxia's effect afterwards to bring back the Moye in the graveyard. And then with the long one in hand, it'll probably be sufficient.
Target.
Here it comes. He's going to target
He's going to shuffle him back into your deck.
2 cards.
Seems like he's using his Taya's effect.
Alright, that's fine.
He does already have a Moye in the graveyard. Maybe he just.
You can just put a Vishuda, some value Tenyi monster.
That's what indeed is the case. He's going for Ashuna here.
Oh, he did activate it. Okay, I didn't hear him. You would always activate it there.
Oh, yeah. He could forget, though. Sometimes the lights, camera, action can be daunting.
Target.
So Boxia is going to destroy the set to try and summon back a level 4 or lower, but it's going to be level 4 in this case. We didn't get to see it, but it was the Blackout.
This is when you really, really like the Swordsoul strategy. Whenever it gets to start using Boxia's effect like that.
Oh yeah, Boxia is one of my favorite cards in this deck.
And now Blackout in the graveyard makes it so that when that gets banished, you'll be able to get another token. You can really start seeing when this deck gets going, all the interactions.
Now Renard is going to need a Nibiru the Primal Being, or it is going to be Jover here. And
now we set up the Chicha with Blackout in the graveyard, so the banish will result in a token as well.
always nice.
I was playing multiple copies of Taya.
Interesting. Hey, I don't mind. I love Swordsoul Taya. It's really strong, really good at follow-up. Makes emergence just like a one-card starter if you don't have another worm in your hand, which is always nice.
It's also good in prolonged games because it's the only one that can continually use its effect every turn. So, for example, if the game gets really whittled down to small amounts of resources, use the effect, it gets hit with infinite impermanence. If they can't deal with it,
it's still there.
Still on the field.
I've been there. I've been like, oh, I hope I can get rid of this Taya next turn. But the Longy one is going to discard that second copy of Taya that was added to hand, and it's going to special summon that token to the field. Now there's that non-effect monster on the field, so he's going to be able to use that Ashuna to get another Tinny on the field. He's going to go for Vishuda. I mean, should be moments away from finishing this game, bar Nibiru the Primal Being here from Renard. Can't do that. Can't do that. See, this is the only thing where you could make a mistake. Don't do something you can't do, because while the token is face up on the field, you can only synchro summon. See, this is where players get themselves like, your opponent has nothing on the field. Like, you know what you have to do at this point. You have to just synchro and attack for game. But like, they just outplay themselves. That's the only way I know how to describe like what it like. I've seen this happen time and time again, where it's just overthinking is just the biggest enemy of players. Like let's just you don't have to do the most optimal play every time, but get the game done with. But we do see the right order going here. Changing, link away from Monk, go to battle phase. But he could have easily got another warning there for an illegal activation, and it could have added up just because overthinking the situation. Always try and you want to make sure you have all your bases covered, but you got to also just not overthink it.
Still in game 3.
But now they're going to game number 3. It looks like one of the other games concluded. We'll have to see if we can find out which player won that game on the C table. And it looks like table A is still going at it with this Kashtira strategy. He has a lot of cards on the field.
Looks like a...
For Rene.
Yeah, it looks like the Kashtira player is doing pretty well. They had an established field, and it looked like they had Shangri Ira on the field. It's been a while since...
It's still around.
It is still around.
It won't zone lock you like crazy like it used to.
It still does a little bit, though. You'd be surprised.
Yeah, Riseheart's still really impactful, too, just taking those 3 top cards off the top of the deck. I know the first weekend the Phantom Nightmare came out, I played in a tournament, and it hit both my Snake Eyes Poplar off the top of my deck, and I was like, oh, this game's about to be a little bit harder.
I played a regional last year with Kashtira and hit 2 tier names when they were all limited to 1. And he told me at the end of the match,
he was like,
you're not going to believe what you banished. He's like, 2 of the names.
Yeah, sometimes Riseheart is just enough by itself. But it does look like the table we are featuring, that B table, is side decked, and now they're shuffling up. Jesus presented his deck. Now, going into the side deck, we're going to have the Floowandereeze player finally get to go first, which is going to be interesting to see if he has anything, cool. I mean, I know
one card he's going to be having.
I know.
In his deck.
Yeah, definitely.
Harpies,
Featherstorm. Yeah. So that's what I was going to say. I would be cautious of using any of those monster effects from the hand, because even though Thrust adds to the hand if they have a monster, Floowandereeze it's even scarier, because just being able to set a Featherstorm from the deck can be disastrous. Oh, but it does look like Renard hasn't started his game yet. Rene was able to win that game, so if his teammate won on table C, they would win the match. So we're not going to get to see how Renard's Floowandereeze strategy takes off going first in game number 3, because the rest of his teammates won. And Viva Las Vegas, Charlie was able to win on table C here with Voiceless Voice. We missed it. Voiceless Voice did win. And who did he play against? What was Voiceless Voice against? Let me pull it up. Okay, well, he did defeat his opponent's deck. I did forget. The other deck that was on the other side is Dark Magician. I wanted to check in on that. It did finish. It's a really cool Dark Magician deck, I promise you. But using Tamias the United Dragon. That would have been cool to see, but that game ended too quickly, so we weren't able to check in. But Team Viva Las Vegas.
With Kashtira also means they've moving on 3-0 as well.
Yeah, and like
Kashtira.
it's a team without any Fire King Snake Eye, no Snake Eye inside.
Well, they have Wanted.
Wanted kind of counts. So there's a Sinful Spoils there on the team. But, you know, big congratulations there to Renee,
But he's using the
Renard.
Wanted package to actually search Subversion. Not even original.
Yeah, Subversion or the Betrayal, which is cool. I really like the Betrayal aspect. So you're going first, you get Betrayal. Going second, you get Subversion. Subversion Snake Eye actually really lines up well removal into, like, the Amblo Well. You can push the Amblo Well into the back, and then if you're able to put enough damage on the board, it's not, like, as bad. But the Amblo Well represents like two things: bringing back the Link 3 or lower from the graveyard, and that destruction effect. Sometimes that destruction effect, where you can pop a card if Link 3 or lower leaves the field, and it can be either player's field, not just your own. That little push is sometimes the icing on the cake, the cherry on top. So having access to Sinful Spoils up Subversion Snake Eye, pretty cool in this Kashtira strategy. But they're moving on 3-0, and presumably they weren't the one with buys, so they have physically won 3 matches, I think, and playing some off-the-wall strategies, showing that you don't have to use, you know, Snake Eye to still be victorious, at least in the early rounds. Might be a different story at the end of the day, but really cool to see Voiceless Voice, Floowandereeze, and Kashtira here, moving on 3-0.
I'll always root for Kashtira. I know that deck sometimes gets a bad rap, but it's one of my favorite decks. It's a deck I really, particularly right now.
Yeah, I have no problem with it. I don't know. I wasn't a Rise Heart fan, but I'm definitely a fan of the way it plays now. More of like kind of like gadgets. I think you mentioned, we were talking about it earlier. It feels like it's like a control kind of deck. It doesn't do anything too crazy, nothing too overpowered, but just enough. Or like the Heat. You want to tell about like the Heat Soul combo? How do you get to Decode Heat Soul with Kashtira?
You just need 2 level 7s, and you need to make sure that you haven't used Theosis yet, and you need to make sure you didn't special summon Rise Heart from your hand. You can actually go special summon a level 7 Kashtira and normal summon the Rise Heart. A lot of players kind of get confused when you normal summon it and not special summon it, but when you normal summon it, you're not locked into only going into Exceed monsters. And then you can go into 2 level 7s, which allow you to go into Draco Sack, another throwback.
Love Mecha Fan. I love that plane.
Creates 2 tokens. You link both of them into 2 copies of Link Spider. They go into G-Go and Crystal Heart. The Crystal Heart brings back the Link Spider, and then you go into Deco Talker because you have 2 different Cybers monsters that are on the field with different attributes.
Oh, I love that.
Then you get to drop. And now usually in the combo with Fenrir, you actually search Scareclaw Kashtira, because what you would want to do then is special summon the Scareclaw Kashtira, use the birth that you got somewhere along the lines, and then what you're able to do is turn the Draco Sack, because you still haven't gone into any of the effects that lock you out, and you typically end with Deco Talker to allow you to draw again, a IP or SP, depending on how much you want to play around Nibiru, and then Fenrir on the field as well.
Yep, and that sounds really cool, and I hope we're going to see some of that in action. I knew you'd be able to describe that combo quite well, and maybe that is what Renee did, but we're going to find out. We're going to hear from our players and our winners around number 3, so stay tuned. We'll be right back with our winners interview.
All right, welcome back to beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada, where we're here at the Team YCS. But we also have our winners from the previous round. Again, Viva Las Vegas, great name for a team. I gotta say, Rennie, was anything weird about being up in the hot lights of Vegas here when you dueled?
No, we're from Miami, so it's, the hot life is for us.
Great answer, so you're used to it. I gotta say, Renard, we got to see that your match did not conclude. When you're going into game 3, how are you feeling?
I felt like I could have ended game 2 with a W, besides the fact of me breaking with Prosperity, but my teammates, I have faith in them, so,
So speaking of teammates, if I heard you guys right, 2 of you, this is your first YCS. So how is it that you guys met and decided to be on a team together?
We all went to go to a locals together, and then they asked me if I was coming to Vegas, and then they asked me to join the team, and then here we are, began the feature match.
Good deal. So you guys are about to go into round 4. What do you think your chances are of taking this whole thing, especially after being up here?
I think they're really good. I believe in my teammates, but also, Shifter is a thing, so.
Well, you got to watch out Dimension Shifter, but don't worry, we still have so many great rounds of Yu-Gi-Oh! So let's go ahead and send it back to our desk so we can talk a little bit more about that.
That's right. It's funny. Like, a lot of teams are out here playing fire. Other teams just want to watch their decks burn and make sure they have Shifter. And this is going to be one of those anti-strategies, and, it's led them pretty well. There's always the anti-meta kind of you can play going into a tournament, especially in a format like this where there's so many people believing in, like, 1 or 2 decks, and you have those key counter cards. You can capitalize on that sometime and then sneak into the top cut.
I feel like it's always Floowandereeze that fits that role. Whether it was against Tier Elements or some of the other strategies over the course of the last couple of years, Floowandereeze always just sneak in there. Great choice if you don't want to go against what's the sort of more common decks.
Yeah, definitely. It is. I mean, it's able to capitalize on the cards that don't require you to have your extra deck, don't require you to use your graveyard, so you can use those powerful cards like Dimension Shifter, Dimensional Fissure, and Floowandereeze is probably the strongest over the past couple years for the anti-strategy. But Voiceless Voice is making a name for itself. I wouldn't even call that more of an anti-strategy as a different way to play, where you're able to still use one card to form a really serious board that can have a decent amount of interruptions for the opponent.
And it's also a board that's just difficult to deal with all of the protection effects that are ongoing. So I think that's a strategy that can take a lot of players by surprise if they haven't practiced against it, where you're like, oh, this doesn't seem all that overwhelming, and then you sit there and you're like, wait, I can't do this, and that negates that. It's just one of those strategies that does a really good job of protecting the field that it establishes.
Yeah, I definitely think we're going to see some variety this week, and I know going into it, a lot of people are just expecting, it's going to be Snake Eye every round, but no, there are a lot of other decks in the tournament, a lot of other viable picks, but you do need to know your matchup against that deck. You have to have side deck cards ready, because any format, there's going to be a deck that a lot of players are going to gravitate towards. This one maybe more so than others, but if you're prepared for it, you can take any strategy into a tournament and do well with it. I mean, I always saw you kind of like one of those players that likes to capitalize. Like, you're a big hero player, right? And I don't know if there's ever